You're all set, Rachel. Just wait for the call next week. That was the last thing my manager said before blindsiding me 4 days later with a cold email, subject line, restructure update. No salutation, no thank you, just a single sentence. Your position has been eliminated effective immediately. I stared at the screen, blinking, breath stalled. I'd just been erased. I'm Rachel Myers, 49 years old, divorced. And until last Thursday, I was the regional operations lead at Clarion Industries, a mid-sized logistics firm in North Carolina. I'd spent 15 years there. That's 780 weeks, if you're counting. And I had been counting, actually, because the last few months had been quietly unbearable. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and the conversation dies? Or when someone forgets to CC you on an email you used to own? That slow creeping sense that you're being edged out of something you helped build? That had become my normal. But let's rewind. I wasn't hired into leadership. I started in customer service. I answered phones, filed incident reports, ran operations night shifts that no one else wanted. And for a long time, I didn't mind. I was just happy to have a job that offered health insurance and stability after my ex-husband walked out on me and our 2 boys. Over time, I earned trust. Promoted twice in 3 years. Then I took over our struggling Raleigh region and turned it profitable in under a year. My team and I hit every benchmark after that. Revenue, retention, on-time performance. There were months we carried the entire Southeast, but I never played the politics game. I was too busy doing the work. And I think that's what made me invisible to the people who mattered. The change started subtly. First, our new VP of Operations, Cameron Hill, arrived from a tech startup on the West Coast. He was all buzzwords and bravado. You know the type. Smiles like a toothpaste ad, talks like he's pitching a TED Talk. At first, I tried to be optimistic. Maybe he'd bring in tools to help us modernize. Maybe he'd even listen, but it became clear fast. He wasn't interested in the people who had built the foundation. He was there to optimize. Cut costs, consolidate, rebrand. He never learned anyone's name below director level, including mine. Then they brought in a third-party consultant, Madeline Vega. Slick, young, intimidatingly sharp. She'd sit in on our meetings taking notes but never asked questions. The room would grow quiet when she entered. People started watching their words. And then reports started disappearing. Numbers shifted without explanation. Budgets were suddenly under review. I knew something was coming, but I didn't expect it to be so cowardly. They didn't even let me say goodbye. It revoked my access before I could finish reading the termination email. One day, I was running 6 districts. The next, I was locked out of my calendar like I never existed. But what they didn't realize was, I had been documenting everything. Every decision. Every inconsistency. Every skipped protocol. For months. Not because I expected this, but because when things start to feel wrong, you start keeping receipts. And receipts? I had plenty, but I wasn't going to send some angry email or post a bitter goodbye on LinkedIn. No, I had a better plan, one they would never see coming, because I knew something they didn't. And soon, the entire company would know it too. The silence in the elevator that morning felt heavier than usual, like the building itself knew something was off. I'd passed the familiar hum of servers and the soft clatter of keyboards, but the energy had shifted. People looked at me differently, not with disrespect, more like uncertainty, like they were waiting for the moment I'd shatter. But I didn't. I smiled, greeted everyone like always, and walked straight to my desk. The same desk I'd had for 17 years, tucked into the far corner of the IT floor, surrounded by monitors, system maps, and the smell of overworked hardware. It was only 8:07 a.m., but I knew my time here was already over. Still, I had one job left to do. I didn't pack up immediately. Instead, I powered up my computer, slowly, carefully. Just like I'd done every day since the company was still in a cramped office suite with flickering lights and secondhand chairs. Back then, we were building something. Now, they were tearing it down. I opened a terminal window. No alarms, no flashy screens. Just quiet commands, executed with precision. I wasn't doing anything illegal. I'd never crossed that line. But I wanted to be sure everything I had quietly documented over the years was safe, intact, and mirrored. For months, I'd watched my access permissions quietly shift. No emails, no announcements, just a subtle reconfiguration, removing me from admin panels I'd built myself. Jason Phillips, the consultant, had clearly been pulling strings behind the scenes, and Daniel, my boss, had been nodding along like a puppet with a quarterly bonus on the line. What they didn't realize was that while they'd been busy modernizing, I had been quietly archiving. Every audit trail, every unauthorized access request, every inflated vendor invoice masked beneath lines of code no one else even knew to check. At 9:32, I got an email. Subject line. Transitioning it. Leadership. The kind of corporate language meant to sound clean, professional, harmless. But I saw right through it. The email didn't mention my name. Not once. After 17 years, I was being erased like a corrupted file. No farewell lunch, no announcement, no thank you, just deletion. I clicked it closed. It wasn't anger that filled me. It wasn't even sadness. It was something colder, clearer, purposeful. I stood, grabbed a cardboard box from under my desk, and began packing slowly. My old coffee mug, the framed photo of Olivia at her first science fair, and the stress ball from that acquisition year when everything almost collapsed, but didn't, because I had stayed late and caught the server bug just in time. As I was wrapping my second monitor cord, I felt a presence. Beth, from HR. Nervous smile, eyes darting, she handed me an envelope. Severance terms, a clean break. I didn't open it. Behind her, Daniel stood in his glass office, arms crossed, watching. He didn't wave, didn't move, just made sure I was actually leaving. I was, but not in the way they expected. As I stepped into the elevator, I caught my reflection in the brushed metal walls. Same streaks of gray in my hair, same worn-out blazer. But something had changed. The woman they fired wasn't the one walking out. That woman had been loyal, quiet, trusting. The one leaving? She had a plan. I spent the next day exactly as they hoped I wouldn't. Silent. Not desperate. Not begging for clarity or closure. But watching, listening, and connecting dots they didn't even know were there. At 8 a.m., I brewed my coffee and sat down at the old roll-top desk in my spare room, my unofficial command center. The house was quiet. No calendar invites, quick syncs. No Slack messages screaming for a last-minute miracle. Just me, and the system I knew better than anyone else. I started where they underestimated me most. Access logs. Despite HR's attempts to revoke my credentials, a few of my back-end privileges were still alive. Jason clearly hadn't anticipated how deeply embedded I'd been into the architecture. Rookie mistake. It took me all of 10 minutes to confirm that I could still reach the secondary audit server. And that's where it started. A pattern emerged. Quiet, almost invisible at first, like a faint pulse. Weekly transactions, routed through internal purchase orders to an unfamiliar vendor. LexCore Solutions. Sounds legitimate, doesn't it? Clean website, a vague enterprise IT strategy description, no red flags on the surface. But something felt off, so I did what any meticulous systems analyst would do. I opened the invoices, one by one. Same amounts, repeating every 2 weeks, slightly increasing, always signed off by the same person, CFO Darren Cole. With technical implementation support vaguely listed in the service description. Except, we hadn't implemented anything new in over 5 months. That's when the chill hit me. I checked the business registration of LexCore Solutions, registered to a residential address in upstate New York, owned by someone named Emily Cole. Darren's wife. I pushed back from the desk, heart racing. No freaking way. They didn't just fire me to restructure. They fired me to remove the last person who could trace this. They thought the quiet woman who stayed late, trained the interns, and documented everything wouldn't look twice. They were wrong. It was all starting to make sense. The sudden modernization initiative, the consultant who just happened to appear, the slow erosion of my privileges, the conveniently timed performance review that barely acknowledged my actual work. This wasn't incompetence. It was cover. And the worst part? I almost walked away quietly. Almost believed I was just collateral damage. But now I had clarity. I had motive. And oh, did I have the receipt? I spent the next 3 hours gathering every piece of evidence I could. Transaction logs, emails, payment authorizations, all documented, cross-checked, and saved on an encrypted drive. This wasn't just a hunch. It was a fully traceable, fraudulent paper trail. By early afternoon, I was ready for my first move. I drafted an anonymous email to the company's internal ethics hotline, complete with attachments, time-stamped screenshots, and a short, polite message. You may want to look into the relationship between LexCorp Solutions and Darren Cole. The numbers don't add up. Click. Send. Less than an hour later, I received an auto-reply confirming receipt. Standard language. Nothing urgent. But I wasn't relying on that alone, because I knew something else they didn't. Board meeting was Friday, and one of the board members, Judith Kramer, was someone I'd helped personally years ago when her home laptop was compromised. She'd never forgotten it. Still sent me holiday cards. I found her direct email, double-checked the encryption, and sent her a copy of the report. No flourish, no drama, just the facts. Judith, I thought you should be aware before Friday's meeting. Let me know if I can answer any questions. And then, I waited. I made dinner that evening with a strange sense of calm. It was the first time in weeks I hadn't felt angry, or anxious, or small. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to demand justice, because justice was already in motion. By the time I sat down with my tea and opened my laptop again, there were already signs that the storm was brewing. A few LinkedIn views from people in legal. An unscheduled calendar hold popped onto my old work address, flagged as urgent budget review. Oh, I knew what was coming. And the best part? I wasn't done. By Thursday morning, the silence had turned suspicious. I expected whispers, pushback, maybe even legal threats, but there was nothing. Not a word from Meridian's board, no reply from Judith, not even a bounce back from the ethics line. It was too quiet. At first, I wondered if they were ignoring it, burying it like 1,000 other internal complaints. But then I noticed something strange. The LexCorp Solutions website I'd screenshotted 2 days earlier was suddenly under maintenance. I blinked at the screen. Too late. I already had the PDFs, the cash records, the WAUI's registration. They could scrub all they wanted. Then at 10:12 a.m., it happened. I got a call from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. The message was tight, clipped, and unmistakably Judith's voice. Rachel, I've reviewed the materials. Can you speak confidentially today? The board is requesting clarity before tomorrow's vote. My stomach flipped. That wasn't a brush-off. That was the sound of doors unlocking. I called her back, and within minutes, was looped into a secure Zoom line. Her camera was off. Mine was too. Thank you for taking this seriously, I said softly. Judith cleared her throat. I should be the one saying that. Rachel, what you sent us... She paused. I'm stunned. I let that word settle. Stunned. That meant something. That meant she'd seen through the numbers and jargon and straight into the heart of it. The betrayal. The CFO routed company funds through a shell company tied to his wife, I said. It wasn't a clerical oversight. It was designed to blend in. Judith exhaled slowly. And Jason Phillips? I nodded, though she couldn't see it. He was brought in to clean house, remove anyone who might see what was happening under the surface. There was a long pause. Then her voice dropped. Rachel, you're not just blowing the whistle here. You've built the blueprint of a takedown. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She already knew. After we hung up, I sat in my chair staring at the quiet room around me. My tea had gone cold, and the sun had shifted across the hardwood floors. It was an ordinary afternoon, but something had changed. And then, at 2:08 p.m., my inbox lit up. It was a message forwarded to me anonymously. No name, no intro, just a screen capture of a company-wide calendar event. Emergency board session, Friday, 7:30 a.m. In-person mandatory, and underneath that, the list of attendees. Jason, Darren, Vanessa, 3 names glowing like red lights in the dark. My pulse picked up. I couldn't help it. They know. All evening, my phone buzzed with calls I didn't answer, old coworkers texting cryptically. Something's happening. HR is locked down. Vanessa looked like she saw a ghost. And then one from a junior accountant I barely knew. Rachel, were you the one who sent it? I didn't reply. Let them wonder. Let them question every detail of the past 6 months, every invoice, every reassignment, every offhand comment Jason made in the break room. Because when the curtain lifts and the lights hit the stage, it won't be my name under fire. It'll be theirs. And the best part? I'll be watching it all from the front row. Tomorrow was Friday. The board would meet at 7:30 a.m. And when the first slide of that deck went up, the one showing the vendor trail, the inflated payments, the internal approvals, I had a feeling jaws were going to hit the floor. Too much? Maybe. But after 17 years of silence, they were finally going to hear me. By 7:25 a.m., every seat in Meridian's executive boardroom was filled. Some with coffee cups clenched tightly, others with pale knuckles pressed against polished oak. Most of them didn't know why they'd been summoned so early on a Friday morning. But the few who did, they were sweating. Jason sat at the end of the table, tapping his Mont Blanc pen against a legal pad, pretending to look unbothered. Vanessa fidgeted with her phone. And Darren, the CFO, sat stone still, eyes locked on the frosted glass windows, as if waiting for a rescue that wasn't coming. The interim CEO, Judith, stood at the head of the table, expression unreadable. Her assistant whispered something in her ear, handed her a small folder, then left. At exactly 7:30, the door clicked shut behind him. Judith opened the folder and glanced around the room. Before we begin today's scheduled financial review, there's a matter that requires our immediate attention. No one spoke. She continued, her voice steady but cold. Yesterday, the board received a comprehensive report detailing financial irregularities involving a vendor, LexCore Solutions. The report outlines over $1.6 million in questionable payments, potential conflicts of interest, and internal manipulation of budgetary processes. Jason shifted in his seat. Judith turned a page. The documentation includes business registrations linking LexCore to Darren's wife. It also shows that Jason Phillips bypassed standard procurement procedures when onboarding this vendor, without legal review. Boom! It was like a grenade went off in slow motion. Jason straightened, his voice suddenly loud in the stunned silence. This is absurd. I've never even seen... Judith raised a hand. You'll have time to respond, Jason, but for now, let's continue. She clicked the remote. Behind her, the monitor lit up. Slide 1. Vendor registration, LexCore Solutions, LLC. Sospont. Registered agent, Valerie Whitman. Slide 2. Payment history. 90. Isegi. Line item discrepancies, 12-month span. Slide 3. Approval chain, internal emails, redacted. Every head turned toward Darren. His face was gray. He tried to speak, but the words stuck. Judith's voice stayed level. Rachel Lynn, a recently terminated senior systems architect, uncovered this pattern during a compliance review. Her findings have been corroborated by 2 external auditors in the last 48 hours. Vanessa visibly blanched. Jason barked a dry laugh. You're taking the word of someone we fired? Out of what? Spite? Oh, that was rich. Judith didn't flinch. Actually, we're taking the word of the evidence, which is far more compelling than anything I've heard from this side of the table. The chair of the audit committee, a silver-haired man named Elliot, leaned forward. Ms. Lynn provided timestamps, access logs, and backup files. You were sloppy, gentlemen, and you picked the wrong person to underestimate. Jason's mouth opened, but Darren beat him to it. I want to speak privately with counsel. Too late. Mr. Whitman, Judith said, addressing the general counsel, can you confirm that federal law requires disclosure of any financial ties between vendors and employees' immediate families? Yes, he said grimly. And failure to disclose, especially if intent to conceal is proven, constitutes fraud. Fraud. That word hung heavy in the air. Darren dropped his gaze to the table. Jason's hand gripped his pen so tight it snapped. Judith closed the folder. Until further notice, Darren Whitman is suspended without pay. Jason Phillips, your contract with Meridian is terminated effective immediately. Vanessa shot upright. You can't do this. Judith turned to her, cool as glass. You're on administrative leave pending review. You signed off on every single payment. The room went still. Oh my God, they're all falling. The three of them stood frozen, trapped in the moment they realized there was no out, no spin, no scapegoat. Rachel's name hadn't been spoken again. It didn't need to be. Everyone in the room knew exactly who had dismantled the Tower of Lies brick by brick, and done it without ever raising her voice. By 8:17 a.m., they were escorted out, and by 8:19, Judith sent one final email to a private address, Rachel. They're gone. Can we meet? We have an offer for you. When the email from Judith arrived, I was already awake, sipping coffee on the porch as October sunlight spread across the neighborhood. They're gone. Can we meet? We have an offer for you. I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to. Badly. But I'd learned something these last few weeks. Silence can be louder than rage, and much more powerful. Let them sit in the discomfort for a while. The day unfolded slowly. Updates came in from former colleagues. Quiet messages of shock, of admiration, of tentative hope. Rachel, what you did. I've never seen anything like it. I thought you were gone. Turns out you were just getting started. You didn't just survive. You reset the whole damn balance. It was overwhelming, humbling, a little surreal, but above all, it was satisfying. Still, I hadn't answered Judith's email, not until that evening. I met her in a private conference room on the 12th floor, the same floor they'd once escorted me off of without a second thought. She stood when I walked in. Thank you for coming, she said, her tone sincere. I don't think I need to say how much has changed. No, I replied. You really don't. We sat. She wasted no time. The board voted unanimously to create a new role, Executive Director of Information Integrity. It would report directly to the board. You'd have oversight over compliance, security, systems architecture, everything they tried to keep you away from. I let the words settle. The offer was generous, far more than I expected. And what makes you think I'd say yes? I asked calmly. Judith didn't flinch. Because you didn't do all this for revenge. You did it to fix something broken. She was right. That was the scariest part. It hadn't been about payback. It had been about something far deeper. Dignity, clarity, truth. But returning, could I really walk back into the same building that once tossed me aside like I didn't matter? I glanced out the floor-to-ceiling windows. Columbus blinked beneath a soft twilight haze. You don't have to decide now, she added. But I hope you will. I nodded slowly. You'll have my answer by Monday. She smiled. That's all I ask. As I left the building, I didn't feel like a returning employee. I felt like a woman who had rewritten her own ending. But now came the hardest question. Did I want to be part of this company's future? Or had I already outgrown it? I walked back into Langston Corp not as the woman they quietly discarded, but as the one they could no longer ignore. The marble floors hadn't changed. The glass walls still gleamed. But the energy? It pulsed with tension the moment I stepped through. This time, I didn't wait at reception. I was expected. Upstairs, the boardroom was full. Judith stood at the head of the table, the interim CEO to her left. A folder rested in front of her. My terms. Everything I had outlined. Oversight authority, budget independence, security vetoes, reinstatement privileges. She looked up. Rachel, thank you for coming. I sat, slow and deliberate. Let's get one thing clear before I accept anything, I said, locking eyes with each of them. This isn't about power. It's about protection of people, of integrity, of every single voice this company tried to silence. Judith nodded. Understood. The room stayed silent for a beat longer. Then the CEO spoke. The board has unanimously approved your position, Chief Integrity and Security Officer. Your decisions won't need our approval. You've earned this. The phrase landed heavily. Earned, not given. I stood and extended my hand. Then let's begin. As I exited the boardroom, I passed the hallway where I was once walked out without warning. But today, heads turned with quiet respect. No more whispers, no more second-guessing. Stephen caught my eye near the elevators, stunned. Rachel, you're back? I smiled. No, Stephen, I've arrived. Downstairs, as I stepped into the spring sunlight, I felt something shift, not just in me, but in the culture I was about to reshape. The injustice had been real, so was the damage. But now, the healing could begin, with accountability and clarity at the helm. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply becoming impossible to ignore. Have you ever felt overlooked, dismissed, or silenced in your workplace, despite your loyalty and hard work? What would it mean for you to take that power back? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, because your story doesn't end with their decision. It begins with yours.